this is Frank Warren and you're watching Lights Out.
This is Lights Out. I am FAISAL Khan and I'm delighted to be joined by Dean Whyte, the brother of Dillian Whyte. Dean, how you doing?
How you doing, man? I'm fine, man.
Not too bad. I mean, I've had to push the tripod up a bit because, man, you are big in... Yes, you're very big in person. Yeah, so it's been announced Dillian will take on Oscar Rivas at the O2 in July. Talk to us about it.
The 20th. It's an interesting fight. He's undefeated. He's a former Olympian. So he's got good pedigree, you know, like he's 26-0, I believe. Yeah, his last fight he stopped Brian Jennings. So
in the 12th round.
Yeah, or was it 11 for 12 or something, I believe. But listen, he's someone you want to take really serious. He beat, was it Pulev in the Olympics or something? So, you know, like I said, he's a good guy with pedigree. If you're looking at a bunch of the guys that's there, you know, he's up there because he's undefeated. He hasn't lost and he's an Olympian. So we've got to say he's come from good stock. So, you know, Dillian needs to take him serious. I'm sure he will. He'll work really hard, and you know, we'll go out there and hopefully get a spectacular win come July the 20th, knockout or just a win, whatever it takes, you know.
Lucas Brown, Joseph Parker, the rematch with Chisora and now Oscar Rivas. Your brother really does like taking a tough test, doesn't he?
No, listen, he strives on that kind of thing, you know. What you got to appreciate, all the top boys are fighting each other or they're not fighting him. So he needs to be a smart businessman and get the right fights that will get the juices pumping for the fans, because obviously all of his show, he's a pay-per-view fighter, so he has to pick the right fights to excite the fans and get them raring to want to come down to the O2, which is a cauldron in his home, and put on a good show.
Was Oscar Rivas the first choice for Dillian?
I don't believe he was the first choice. There was quite a few. I think there was a list. I think Manuel Charles was on that list because obviously he was a regular WBA champ, but obviously he pushed himself out with the figures he was looking for. I think Brian, I can't remember his name right now, the undefeated guy Brian from America was in the list. Ortiz was in the list. There was a few of them in the list, you know, and yeah. So at the minute they've got this undefeated guy. So you know, it's.
Is this the last fight before a world title shot? Because if you think of Dillian Whyte, surely that world title shot should have come at some point last year, or even perhaps April a couple of weeks ago against Anthony Joshua, which we all thought it would have been.
Exactly. Listen, we were just talking about that in there with Bunsey anyway. You know, like how many more fights is he going to have before? But the WBC clearly doesn't respect Dillian in that capacity. They respect their champion and they're doing everything they can to, you know, keep Dillian away from him. So that's their job. They're looking, remember, that's the guy that pays them the sanction fees, defended his title on numerous occasions, so their loyalty stays with him somewhat. Obviously they've had a chat and they said, you know, certain things which I can't disclose at the minute, but listen, I don't know how many hurdles we're going to have to jump over. Potentially there's a position where it might be, you know, other belts we might have to go up in the ranking and start fighting those guys to get closer to get, you know, other fights with maybe Joshua, so we become mandatory. And so the figures are different when you become mandatory challenger as opposed to them just offering you a figure to fight, you know.
Judging obviously the position that Anthony Joshua's found himself in, was there any was there any, you know, sort of clarification? You know, were you actually interested in going over to America for the fight with Anthony Joshua and June the 1st?
Yeah, of course, I believe Dillian was interested. I think a lot of these guys was interested, but yeah, again, it has to be the figures and the numbers need to match up, especially if you look at the value he brings to the table, because he's a pay-per-view fighter himself. He sells out the O2. So, you know, when you look at the numbers, and then on top of it, the stipulations in the rematch clause was that Joshua was going to get the lion's share again if he lost, which doesn't make sense. But listen, listen, he's looking out for himself. I guess Eddie's looking out for his top boy, which is the Golden Goose. I understand the business model, but obviously Dillian and the team, obviously they've got to think, and we've got to think about ourselves and what's correct and right for us. So we're on our own path, he's on his own path. Hopefully they'll collide later on this year or down the line. You know what I mean?
You've had so many problems with the WBC. Dillian's been mandatory a number of times. Of course, you know, Dillian said that the offers that you received from Anthony Joshua, you know, it wasn't right for him, it wasn't fair to him. Tyson Fury has stated that once he becomes world champion, he will be more than happy to give Dillian Whyte a shot at the title, not only because, you know, a fight with Dillian Whyte is massive for UK boxing, but he also feels as if Dillian Whyte deserves a world title shot. So do you think the easiest route would be to go through Tyson Fury to get through a world title shot? That depends on him becoming world champion, of course.
No, that's good. That's really commendable of Tyson Fury to say that. You know, I probably believe that's what he would say, but then obviously, yet again, the figures have to be right for both fighters, I believe, for them to take that, you know. So, but I think that's nice of him to say that, but yet again, obviously, Joshua holds the majority of the belts, but if he does claim the WBC belt, I'm sure my bro Dill will be all over that fight, you know.
Now, obviously, you know, I mentioned June the 1st, Anthony Joshua, you know, the whole situation with Jarrell Miller. What have you made of Jarrell Miller failing not one, not two, but 3 drugs tests? And, you know, as a fight fan, what do you think the overall punishment should be for Jarrell Miller?
You know, I've said it many times already, you know, in a few interviews. He made a big song and dance about, you know, Joshua being a Juicehead on many other things, but with no backing and nothing to substantiate what he was saying. And here he comes and fails, like you said, not 1, but 3. So, you know, he's got a lot of egg on his face, you know what I mean? I'm sure he's probably been cussed, abused enough. I've said my little bit, you know, I think he, you know, was doing too much, and I think the punishment is the lottery ticket what he lost, which was the 9 million what he was going to get paid. He messed up big time, you know. So I think he could have set his whole family up, his kids up, you know, their kids, you know, that kind of thing, generations, and he failed miserably. So on that note, it's just a shame what he's done to himself and those guys. Maybe he'll come back from this, but whatever punishment they give him is probably warrant, you know what I mean? So I'll just leave it as that, but I think the Juicehead tried to pull too much stunts and he needs to be reprimanded.
Just to touch on something you just said, you just mentioned that it was a $9 million purse he would have received for the Anthony Joshua fight. Now, I don't know what offer Eddie Hearn and Anthony Joshua made to your brother, but was there anywhere near that $9 million mark?
No, it was like 4 or 5 million, so it was real low. So when you look at it, sorry to cut you,
no.
You can just look at it yourself. If they're offering him 9 million and he doesn't bring the same value to the table, it doesn't make sense.
And he's not fought any of the opponents that Dillian's fought as well.
Exactly. So, you know, it just wasn't a fair standpoint. So yeah, that's what it was.
What does it take to get Dillian Whyte in the ring with Anthony Joshua?
It just takes a fair shot. You know what I mean? A fair shot of the playing field. I think there were some stipulations, i.e. the VADA testing, what I heard him speak about the other day, 8 weeks, which he wanted, which Joshua has done at the minute. Those are the kind of things and figures need to be matched, and I think those are the things which was holding blocks in negotiations, and some of them were met. That's why he said he might step in if they offered him the right figure for June the 1st. But obviously those figures haven't been met or maybe not discussed seriously. I believe they've got an opponent now and someone's going to be announced shortly, and I hope it's someone good. I heard Manuel Char. I weren't happy with that fight because I just don't think Manuel Char has a chance against Joshua. I think Joshua would just annihilate him. He would come for a payday, but you know, Joshua is an elite fighter. He holds, was it 3 belts, is it? Or 4, 3 or 4, yeah, something like that anyway. And I just like, as a fan of boxing, I'd like to see him fight someone who's going to test him and push him to the limit. So Manuel Char, for me, was definitely not in the equation. I heard Andy Ruiz is in the equation, Ortiz is in the equation, but he's out. But Andy Ruiz,
Hunter as well.
Michael Hunter is a very, very underrated fighter. You know, because he's a small heavyweight, but he's very got. I think that'll still be a good fight because he's a former Olympian. So I think him fighting Joshua would be a good fight because he's a former Olympian and he moves very well. He gave Usyk a lot of problems in his fight, and then he came over and battered Bakoli. So you know, I think he's someone that could make it interesting. I think Joshua will get the job done eventually, but would need to be on his smarts and just, you know, box smart, and just, I think he'll get him out there in the later rounds. I think a lot of people who move might give Joshua problems, and he moves quite well. And Andy Ruiz, like I was saying before, is another exceptional fighter that lets his hands go. You know what I mean? I think he didn't get the shake of the draw when he fought Parker and lost. I thought he won. He'd be good as well. So those kind of fights, as a fan, I look at that and, you know, a little bit excited, thinking, you know, those are interesting fights. He's not going to fight the elite guys because they're busy, but if you're looking at the landscape, that's not a bad fight. Someone who's going to come, let their hands go, move their head a bit, and not just be there to just be a sitting duck and get clipped. You know what I mean?
Final question. Obviously, we mentioned the WBC route. The WBC champion Deontay Wilder defends his world title against Dominic Breazeale. What's your predictions on that fight?
Dominic Breazeale is a tough guy. as we've seen when he fought Anthony Joshua, he took a lot of punishment. Not sure he'll be able to stand up to Deontay Wilder's kind of power or the alleged power he has. But you know, he seemed to have learned from the loss to Joshua, and he's come back and has had some exceptional wins. Amir Mansour, he fought Ngannou, the Polish kid, and that was a good win because he came back from getting hammered to, you know, coming back and stopping him himself. So he's come back. I'm sure he's learned. I want it to be an interesting fight. I hope it's not a blowout like Stavern came in, sitting duck, and just went down in round 1. I hope he comes and, you know, fights with all his might. You know, and I think if he fought, he'd try and fight Joshua again straight away, because obviously it's the biggest fight with the biggest purse, you know. So it's just what's happening? Yeah, so, you know, hopefully he comes up and puts up a good performance, Brazil, and we'll see. Just as long as they entertain the fans, that's the most important thing. I don't really care who wins, you know what I mean?
Dean Whyte, thank you very much for your time, and thank you for talking to us.
Time, guys, also. Have a good day.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, sure.